You know, Martin, as we're deciding how to proceed with our English studies, I genuinely believe we should only consider native speakers as teachers. There's simply no substitute for learning a language directly from someone who grew up immersed in it. The cultural nuances, idiomatic expressions, and even the pronunciation, these are things only a native speaker can truly teach you.
I get your point, Thomas, but I strongly disagree. While native speakers undoubtedly have an advantage in terms of instinctive language use, being a great teacher requires more than just being a native speaker. A skilled non-native teacher who has mastered the language can often explain grammar, vocabulary, and structure far more effectively because they've been through the same learning process themselves.
That's precisely the issue, though. Non-native teachers may be technically proficient, but their understanding of natural speech patterns or cultural subtleties can be limited. For instance, how many non-native teachers can teach the difference between I could care less and I couldn't care less, or explain why Americans say gonna instead of going to? These subtleties are second nature to native speakers.
While that may be true in some cases, it's not universally applicable. Many proficient non-native teachers dedicate years to understanding those subtleties and can explain them in a way that's clear and systematic. A native speaker might not even recognize these details because they take them for granted. Have you ever had a native teacher who just said, "That's how we say it," without explaining why? That's frustrating for a learner.
Fair point, but consider this. A native speaker can expose you to the authentic rhythm and melody of the language. I've noticed that students taught by native speakers often have better pronunciation and intonation. Isn't that the ultimate goal of learning a language, to sound as natural as possible?
Sounding natural is important, but it's not the only goal. Communication is the priority. A well-trained non-native teacher can provide clear models for pronunciation and, more importantly, help students develop strategies to improve their speaking skills independently. Besides, it's not as if native speakers automatically have perfect pronunciation skills. Think about regional accents or even the occasional grammatical errors native speakers make.
Sure, but we can't ignore the immersion factor. A native speaker offers not just language lessons, but a cultural experience. They can share real-life anecdotes, authentic expressions, and a deeper understanding of traditions and idioms, which adds richness to the learning process. Can a non-native teacher really replicate that?
True, a native speaker has that cultural edge, but let's not underestimate the role of a well-prepared non-native teacher. They often compensate by specializing in cultural studies and tailoring lessons to address learners' needs more effectively. Plus, they know the common pitfalls students face and can empathize with the challenges. A native speaker might not always recognize why a certain concept is difficult for a non-native student.
But empathy doesn't equal expertise. What about fluency? Non-native teachers may excel in grammar and structure, but their fluency might not match a native speaker's. Isn't it risky to learn from someone whose own command of the language could have gaps?
Fluency isn't necessarily an issue for a proficient certified non-native teacher. And remember, expertise lies in teaching, not just in speaking the language. Some native speakers might be fluent, but lack the pedagogical skills to teach effectively. A non-native teacher often invests significant effort in understanding language acquisition and teaching methodologies, which benefits their students immensely.
I see your point, but there's something inspiring about learning from someone who embodies the language. It's motivating to strive toward their level of fluency and confidence. You can't deny that a native speaker provides an aspirational model.
That's a valid perspective, but don't underestimate the inspiration of a non-native teacher who has achieved mastery. They prove it's possible to learn the language thoroughly and become just as effective as a native speaker. That's a powerful example for students, especially those who doubt their ability to reach fluency.
So are you saying native speakers are unnecessary?
Not at all. I'm saying that being a native speaker shouldn't be the sole criterion for choosing a teacher. The best option depends on the individual teacher's skills, experience, and ability to connect with students. A native speaker with teaching qualifications might be ideal, but a qualified non-native teacher can be just as effective, sometimes even more so.
Fair enough. I suppose there's merit in both perspectives. Maybe the real answer lies in finding a balance, a teacher who combines linguistic fluency with excellent teaching skills, regardless of whether they're native or non-native.